Hello, my name is Amanda Trick. I interviewed fantasy artist Rob Carlos. I was, in a manner of speaking, introduced to him by my mother. She has been a fan of his for a number of years and has many of his prints. Not only was it an amazing opportunity to pick the brain of an amazing artist, I was also introduced to new artists' works. This was a very interesting project. I learned a lot and I had so much fun doing it. Unfortunately, I was unable to speak with him in person as he lives in Washington State and I am in Florida. FaceTime and Skype were not an option, so I had to do this all via email. Still, it was pretty great, and I hope you all enjoy it. Question 1. What do you see as the role of the visual arts in our mass-mediated world, and particularly in your profession? Answer. I think the mass media culture thrives on the kind of imagery I and others like me create. As a fantasy artist, dragons and wizards, fairies, and the like are my world. And Hollywood and the video game industry have embraced these themes lately. I believe there will be space for new fantasy imagery in the popular culture for a long time to come. Having played many of these video games myself, some of the artwork on these games, such as you see here, Final Fantasy XIV and Skyrim, they're absolutely amazing. Just seeing these pictures, they don't do just as you would see them on screen. If you get the chance, you should check them out on screen. They're absolutely amazing. Question 2. With new communications and media technologies, imagery is almost instantly available. Do you believe that this is having a positive or negative influence on the industry? Provide an example. Answer. Both, certainly. The ready availability of current art is a huge driving force for creating inspiration to a new generation of artists. And for working artists these days, being able to get your new work into the eyes of your fans as quickly as possible can only be a good thing. People don't have to find the time to visit your gallery to see what you've done lately. They can just go to your website and see what you finished the night before. Of course, there is a flip side to this. So many people feel like the internet version of the image is all they need, and it turns someone from being a potential customer to a casual fan very quickly. It's changed the way an independent artist needs to think and work in order to make a living. Giving a customer more than what they can see on the internet has become important. Merchandising and licensing used to be things that only very successful artists could do or afford, or were lucky enough to be asked to do. Now it's become almost necessary to create products like that, to take images off the screen and turn them into something more tangible. Question 3. What particular images do you see that are frequently rechanneled through the entertainment industry? Answer. I'm not sure I'm understanding this question, and if I do, it's enormous, and trying to answer it would take a lot of time and research to find the names and creators of all the images you see on Facebook over and over again, particularly of cats. Images from movies, television, and other pop culture have become memes, repeated with various captions which may or may not give them extra or alternative meanings. There are so many that I doubt anyone has kept track of them all. Question 4. Are there particular images that this industry has popularized and or created? Answer. I think everyone has seen thousands of cat pictures, right? Moving on. Question 5. Who is one of your favorite visual artists and or what is your favorite style of visual art? Today I'd have to say Todd Lockwood is high on my current list of favorites. A fantasy artist as well, but there are so many others I really like for a variety of reasons. Some more than Todd in some ways, though he has what I think is the most well thought out visual style. I've learned a lot from him over the past 10 years or so. Fantasy art has always called to me, but recently I discovered an artist named Roy Tabora, who paints Hawaiian landscapes with so much of the beauty and feeling of the locations captured, and I immediately became a fan. Plus, we had a chance to meet him a few weeks back, and he's just about the most open, friendly artist you can imagine. Going to shows and conventions around the world has afforded me the opportunity to meet many of the stars in my field, and quite a few of them fall onto my list of favorites, such as Annie Stagg, Joseph Corsentino, and Paul Vincenti are a few of the names that fall high on the list. They all have websites that are worth checking out, even if you aren't interested in fantasy art. Each of them is a master of their technique. Question 6. How has your knowledge of famous artwork influenced your creative process? Answer. Art history was probably my worst class in college. I knew the images, but I had a hard time remembering who did what and when. I really think that the classical famous art only really indirectly influences me, as it influenced the most current people that I am inspired by today. The understanding and technique that earlier realism artists learned from the old masters are things that I use today, but my understanding of who influenced them to learn these techniques is probably fairly limited. I do get some of them. I do get some of the. I do get some of my love of lighting styles from the Dutch masters like Rembrandt, who is my favorite of that era. I had a chance to see his paintings in person and a few years ago in Portland, and it was amazing to see the difference between actual paintings and photographs that you see in history books, which do a surprisingly terrible job of capturing these images. Question 7. What artist and/or piece inspires you to become an artist and why? Michael Whelan's Elric series from the late 1970s was probably one of the most influential works that set me on the path to where I am today. There are so many others from that time period, such as Frank Frazetta, Boris Vallejo, and the like, but I think Michael was the biggest influence. Question 8. If you could choose any other profession, what would it be and why? Answer. I once considered being a musician. I used to be a fairly competent guitarist. These days, being out of practice, I'm probably just barely passable. Music is often a part of my creative process, and some of my most popular images and pieces I've done in a collaboration with musicians. Question 9. Have you always wanted to be an artist? Answer. I've always been pointed in that direction. I was drawing with some identifiable intent at the age of 3, but of course, an early grade school child isn't thinking of an art career just as fun. I seem to remember astronaut being high on the list back then. It wasn't until high school when I started to be able to sell my work and I started to imagine that my artwork could be something I could do for a living. Question 10. What is your favorite style? Answer. I am a fan of realism and representationalism, which Microsoft Word doesn't seem to think is a real thing. I and other artists that work in my field have used the word to define art that creates a believable representation of something that in some way doesn't really exist. Question 10. What piece of advice would you give someone who is struggling to be a successful artist? Answer. Practice, but only good practice. Find the artists that inspire you, but then be sure not to try to copy their styles. They will always be better than you at being themselves. To be successful, you have to get good at being yourself. And if art is what calls to you, then keep it. It's not an easy profession, but if you are truly an artist at heart, you won't be happy doing anything else. And I agree with this, since, he's a visual artist and I'm written. And I've done many things over the years, and I wasn't truly happy until I actually started writing and writing and writing. And now that I'm here going to school for writing, I'm happier than I've been in a long time. Question 11. Have you ever done anything other than fantasy art? Answer. The simple answer, yes. Then a list. Individual and family portraits, catalog design, typography, landscapes, wildlife art, logo design, branding, murals, wood carving, animation, photo manipulation, and probably a dozen or so other things that I'm forgetting. To be a good representationalist, I believe you have to be able to do a lot of other styles competently. Question 12. What is your favorite piece you have done and why? Answer. There's a little something about every piece that I hold dear, and it's rarely what anyone would expect. But of all my works right now, I think my favorite is Armageddon Dragon, possibly because it's so current. Ravens in the Library is a close second. Of course, all that may change tomorrow. Here's a list of the artists' titles of their work that is mentioned or listed in this podcast. Please check out their websites. Even if you're not so much a fan of their style of art, just looking at it's amazing. They're absolutely beautiful works. Rob Carlos's website is www.colorsmith.com. Annie Stegg is, sorry about that. Annie Stegg is www.anniestegg.com. Joseph Corsentino, www.timeofthefairies.com. Todd Lockwood, www.toddlockwood.com. Roy Tabora has website, like pages within pages. His main website is www.taboragallery.com, where I got these pictures from Return to Paradise and The Unveiling. Was taboragallery.com/Roy Roy.orig.html. And then I found the Rembrandt portrait Jacob Wrestling with the angel at Google Art Project. Thank you. I'm sorry for all the hiccups and all in my speech. I'm trying to listen to make sure my children don't scream and hurt themselves, and but I hope you've enjoyed this. I've thoroughly enjoyed making it. Thank you, and have a nice day, and happy holidays.